Welcome to this week's edition of Brew Skies Booze News. I am Mike Morgan, freshly back from living on poutine and beaver tail, which is not nearly as interesting as it sounds. And you, sir, are Brett Coleman Baker.
That's
back
true.
from Europe.
Back from France, where
Back
I've been drinking
France.
spoiled grape juice for 2 weeks. It's
Wow.
good to be back.
Just like a fancy ass.
It's good to have good beer again. But why don't we start off with a quick and final Canada update? What is your final takeaway on the state of the drinks industry in Canada, where you're only allowed to drink 2 drinks a week?
Here is, well, says the government. Here's the problem. Actually, before I left, we told people that we were going to do some check-ins, and I intended to do that. But there's a weird carryover. It wasn't just that I was drunk and high, but there seems to be some weird carryover thing with COVID in at least Vancouver Island, if not British Columbia. I haven't been able to get to the root of anything because I wasn't able to walk into a bar and just get a drink the entire time. Everything is, you have to see a server to get seated anywhere. And if you get seated at a bartender is also a server. Right now, whether it's law or it's just how the industry evolved up there post-COVID, you can't walk into a bar and get a beer or a drink of any kind. It's a whole, regimented process. So I could never just go socialize with locals or even talk to bartenders or anything like that.
That was my least favorite thing about French drinking culture as well, is you can't just saunter up to the bar and order a drink. You got to sit at a table. You got to wait to a server who doesn't give a fuck about you to come to your table and take your order. And then good luck having them come back at any point in time. And at that point in time, it's just the whole spontaneous moment is gone.
That was the exact same thing with Vancouver Island. It was a fantastic trip. I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous, but the bar experiences sucked. Yeah, you want to, oh man, I'm off a trail and I want to walk into a bar and grab a beer.
Yeah.
And 30 minutes later, a server takes the order. I
don't have a problem going up to the bar. I don't need you to bring me a beer. I can order one myself and take it to my table. Yeah.
So that's why I didn't learn dick about what's going on from a drinking scene. I did have some good beers.
It's interesting how COVID's kind of put a damper on the drinking experience and being able to have more of a spontaneous interaction at a bar. I really hope it comes back, because right now it's just not as fun as it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's true even here, but definitely I was glad to get back to the States. It was nice to get into Seattle and be able to just walk up to a bar.
Yes.
It's God, thank God I'm an American. The healthcare system's going to bankrupt me, but at least I could just get a beer.
An expensive beer, but a beer.
Yeah.
Well, the French update is largely the same as it was 2 weeks ago. Wine is alive and well. It's not changing. What I found interesting, though, is when I got to southern France, Montpellier, that town is the first town in France in recent memory to have drank more beer than wine as a collective. So this one town on the southwestern corner of the south of France, it's really artistic. There's a lot of young people. There's a couple universities. So it's a little bit weird. It's this microcosm of craft beer that doesn't really exist anywhere else in the country, which I thought was really interesting.
Wow.
Now, the craft beer wasn't great. It's not American standards, but it's there, it's available, and it's cool to see that maybe there is a little bit of change in the French drinking culture coming.
I cannot picture geography well enough to know whether or not this is a stupid question, but is that near the German border?
It's near the Spanish border.
Okay.
It's the Basque region.
So, which is also a big wine. So it's just an arbitrary little island of craft beer.
Yeah, which is pretty great.
Was the wine spectacular?
The wine was pretty spectacular. It's amazing being able to go to a place and get a carafe of wine for €8, and it's enough for 2 people to have for a whole course of meal. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing we talk about. One of the things that is interesting about bar restaurant culture in the States is this compulsion to mark up wine out of being just a comfortably drinkable beverage. I mean, you can't go to a restaurant and get a carafe of table wine that is reasonably priced.
No.
It's all 4, 5, 800% markup.
Yeah, which is insane. It doesn't need to be that way. It just doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah.
And the no tipping thing is just it's so nice. It just makes food feel like you're actually paying what you should be paying, not 25% more at the end of the meal. So that felt really good too. Bud Light update. Bud Light remains down 30%. This is held still. Modelo is the #1 beer even through Labor Day. So this is what we've been talking about for months. This is if Bud Light makes it through Labor Day and the data doesn't look better, consider it the slow death has begun. It's made it through Labor Day. The slow death has begun. Modelo did $107 million in a week of sales. Bud Light did 101. It's official. Bud Light is dead.
It's not dead though, right? I mean, it's
$100 million a week is still a shitload of money.
Right. It's like in a Mitch McConnell state. You know,
A fugue state.
it's not dead, but it's not alive. I mean, it's definitely not coming back, you know. But it's gonna hang around.
And what's interesting is that
Gonna hang around and stink up the place for a while.
it is good. Got that old man smell going real strong. Just like, what the hell is happening, Bud Light? Clean yourself. The top 10 brands of beer in the U.S. have all basically seen double-digit growth this year so far, except for Bud Light. And I think that's really interesting because it just highlights what we've been talking about how inflation sucks. People are still going to drink, but we're going to trade down. So Corona, Coors Light, Miller Lite, Twisted Tea, Modelo, all up double digits in both volume and dollars. So these cheap brands are just killing it right now.
Wow.
Not really much more to say about that. But speaking of Anheuser-Busch, Teamster negotiations have started. They're looking to increase wages and benefits for the 5,000 brewers that this will impact in the U.S., which I think is a pretty big deal coming. Do you anticipate a strike?
I don't know, but I mean, it is interesting that we are seeing a resurgence of the labor movement that I didn't really expect. I mean, I thought the labor movement was dead, but we have this strike in the auto industry right now. I mean, we have, they keep getting repulsed, but these efforts to unionize Amazon, Starbucks, some of these other really large companies, they're starting to take hold. So I think that we're seeing, I don't think we're, you know, on the cusp of being the 1890s or anything, but we are seeing some resurgence of labor kind of flex its muscle. So maybe.
It's what we need. I mean, when your CEO is making 400 times more than the average or lowest paid employee at a company, there's a problem. There's a big problem. So I hope this continues. And at the end of the day, what I don't even understand is all these companies, they want to make more money. They want to make more money. Well, part of the way you make more money is selling your fucking product.
Right.
And if your people that work for you and that work in this country aren't making money, how the fuck are they going to buy your product?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm happy to see this.
That was a big part of Henry Ford's mentality. And Henry Ford was an evil, wicked motherfucker.
Oh, he was a horrible human.
But he did have one very good piece of enlightened self-interest, and that was that he wanted his workers to be able to afford to buy his cars. And it was smart. I mean, for decades and decades, if you worked at Ford, you drove a Ford. But that started with, you know, when cars transitioned from being something that only the really ultra wealthy could afford, to both reducing the price of the car, but also paying the workers enough that they could afford to buy cars.
Yep.
And it really helped the brand. And it's, yeah, I mean, it is long term, it's enlightened self-interest. It's not socialism. It's how you sell more stuff. I mean, Christ, you have to have, you can't starve out your consumers and expect to sell more stuff.
That's what I don't get, is because you can still do good but be selfish.
Right.
That's what doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
You can still be an asshole in the long run, but still do have some positive impact.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Speaking of unions, Mike, we have an anchor update.
We do have an Anchor update. So we've talked about Anchor a few episodes. We're going to continue to do so. And actually, we're trying to get somebody on from what's called the Anchor, I forgot the name of it already, the Anchor SF Cooperative, I think. And this is the formal organization of the unionized Anchor employees that are trying to buy the company from Sapporo. And as we have covered and discussed in the past, and reacted to with some gunplay, Sapporo shut these guys down and said, we don't care that you know how to run the brewery. We don't care that apparently even for an extended period of time before Sapporo shut it down, Sapporo just walked away from it, lost interest in it. So they had been running the company themselves for the final months of it and doing a fine job of it. Sapporo has taken the assets into liquidation. So they have moved forward with dismantling and destroying the company. But these guys are still fighting a really good fight. They have formally organized as this cooperative. They have elected a board of directors. They set up a GoFundMe page with a goal of raising $50,000 as some starter money. They raised that in a week, and they're up to over $100,000 right now. So people out there are responding to this, and I hope that they're successful in what they're trying to do. I mean, it's a David and Goliath story, but these guys, they know how to run a brewery. They love this beer. They love the history of it, and it's going to be a beautiful thing for the craft beer industry if they succeed.
I mean, it has a really good chance of being a story of American exceptionalism and ingenuity and persistence, if they can pull this off.
Yeah.
This could be like, a folk tale eventually within the craft beer industry.
Yeah.
If they manage to do this, which is very low odds, even still at this point. But they're making good effort.
Yeah.
And so if you want to support them, you can find their GoFundMe. Just go on GoFundMe and search it. It's going to be easy to find.
Anchor SF Cooperative.
And if you want to support us, go on Patreon and buy us a pint. That's the best way you can support us. Continue to like, share, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff to help support us here at Brew Guys so we can keep doing what you love and what we love to do. And then obviously check out our other stuff. Go to brewsguys.beer. Check out our YouTube channel. Wherever podcasts are found, just search us. Anyway, support Anchor, support Brew Guys. On to the next thing. Interestingly enough, on this day...
I'll be the judge of that.
On this day in 1923, the New York Times ran an article about Britain running rum during Prohibition to the United States.
Shocking.
And there was a call for prohibitionists to shut down trade between Britain and the U.S.
Wow.
Which I thought was pretty interesting. So obviously, why wouldn't you run rum, huh? If you can? Like, who wouldn't? That sounds awesome.
The rest of the world took advantage of it. Yeah, I've never fully understood, like, the Canadian system, but they did something like Canada had prohibition, but at the same time, they kept it legal to make it. And the whole thing was this wink and a nod that we're going to continue to make Canadian whiskey to run it across the border and sell it to those dummies.
I love the story of like Lake Erie freezing over and people driving their cars across Lake Erie to load up and come back, and it's just brilliant stuff.
Those were the days.
Speaking of
Let's get prohibition again. Well, you got a brewery, we'll just turn it into, we'll camouflage it, and
we'll make soda.
You make soda, and you're like quintuple the price of everything. Which is what happened during Prohibition.
Speaking of terrible things, though, Margaritaville.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the news, Mike, here in his neighborhood.
Peace, Mr. Buffett.
Mr. Buffett is dead. Apparently, Cincinnati was one of his best locations outside of his hometown and stuff.
Which says a lot of things about, sure.
It does.
Most of those people came from Westchester and Mason, just for the record.
So Margaritaville is opening up a new resort here in Ohio on the Ohio River in the Kentucky side. $133 million to build a hotel, bar, and Margaritaville restaurant.
Yeah, a few blocks from my house. I'm very thrilled. Yeah, and they have apparently crossed a couple of hurdles with the Kentucky State Legislature, and their next steps all have to do with tax abatements and tax credits,
Of course.
which is one of those many things in life that rubs me raw. the state will tax the absolute shit out of small businesses, but if you come in with a few $1 billion, then wow, let's figure out how you don't have to pay taxes.
Yes. The exact people that should be paying taxes,
Yes.
especially on something like a Margaritaville on the Ohio River.
Right.
30 years from now, it's going to sit empty, right?
Yes. And if it's not a good enough business model now to function on a profitable basis, then don't open it, fucker.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you need tax cuts in order to make your business profitable, you don't have a business.
Right.
Speaking of shitty things, dynamic pricing has finally come for the alcohol industry. London, there's multiple places in London that are now charging more for a pint of beer or alcohol of any kind when it's busiest. So if you go out at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. and you want a pint, it's going to cost you 50 pence more than it would otherwise.
Oh my God, I hate the world.
Apparently, they're saying this is gonna bleed in across the whole sector, and it won't be long until basically all westernized worlds are running dynamic priced alcohol drinks.
Because let's just greed it all out to the furthest extent possible.
Yep. They're pulling it from airline pricing, basically. If you want to travel on a busy weekend, it's going to cost you more. If you want to go out on a busy night, it's going to cost you more.
I think that all of our experiences with the airline industry indicate that all businesses should be run like the airlines. Because we're all so happy about flying, and it works so well. We had a couple of bars here in Cincinnati that were doing like dynamic pricing, but like stock market pricing for a while, which was a gimmicky thing. Like if people in the bar at that moment were buying more of a specific beer, or drink whatever, it drove the price of that up. And if they weren't
drinking it
right. Yeah, so you could just hang out, and I mean, as long as you're flexible, which clearly we are, you could hang out and just get good values on the stuff that the people around you weren't drinking. But
I enjoyed that. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's gimmicky and it's fun. It's different from let's just hose everybody on everything because it's a popular. But also, I don't like crowds. I'm more of a happy hour drunk. So if they're fleecing the 20-somethings for being at the bar at 11 o'clock, whatever.
It's not great. It's just more slow death type stuff for the industry as a whole.
Yes.
If you're negatively enforcing people to not go out when it's busy, they're just not going to go out.
Right.
Young people aren't going to go out earlier. Right. They're just not going to go out.
Yeah, it doesn't mean... I mean, people run all sorts of fantastic happy hour specials on Monday afternoons or Monday happy hour. And, they may make some bars Mondays less bad than typical, but you're not going to change the fact that most normal people don't want to go out and pound a bunch of drinks on a Monday. And it's the same thing. I mean, young people, you pregame, if you're going to go, you pregame and then you hit the bar at 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock. Sorry, I almost shut down. I had like a Mitch McConnell moment. But but yeah, you're right. You're not going to change the drinking patterns of 20-somethings that have existed for decades. They're not going to get together on social media and say, 8 o'clock is the new 11 p.m. They're just going to go to parties, do drugs. They're going to find alternatives. It's
go to clubs, just not go to bars.
You're just going to drive more consumers out of your bars.
It's stupid.
Greed, killing, profit.
Yep. Church in Cornwall in England has installed a bar in their 600-year-old historic landmark church.
Nice.
The vicar, I don't know what that is, but the vicar, or however the fuck you say it.
Vicar, I think, although I'm not sure what the hell it is.
I don't know what they do, but the vicar was apparently caught behind the bar pouring pints wearing his Holy Communion fit, which apparently pissed off about half the parishioners. So you got half this congregation that is mad, the other half that's happy, and this church put in a bar basically and then held a 2-week festival to celebrate their installing of a bar. And I think it's fantastic. I might go to church if there was a bar where you could just get pints during service.
Yeah, sure.
Pre-game before football on a Sunday? Count me in.
We have one church in the city of Cincinnati. Not that I'm doing far too many Cincinnati updates, but we do have a church here that still has its own bar. It's got a Rathskeller. It's actually our oldest church in the city of Cincinnati. It's called Old St. Mary's. It's Catholic, and it has a Rathskeller bar beside it in the basement.
I did not know this.
Yep. And the church has been doing, it's the only one in the United States that's been doing German Mass every Sunday since 1842.
Wow.
So after German Mass, they go to the Rathskeller and get hammered on a bunch of German beers.
That actually sounds pretty great.
Yeah. I used to take them beers for Bachfest, and, you know, I don't speak German and I'm an atheist, so I didn't understand anything up until the drinking of the beer part. But it was great, you know? That priest could kick back some beers, man.
Roll out the barrels, as they say.
Yeah.
Here's your shitty take of the week. There is a wine producer over on Stellenbosch, which I believe is in Italy. He said that yeast makes winemakers lazy. He was basically saying if you buy yeast and use it to make wine, you should just be using natural fermentation and spontaneous fermentation instead. Otherwise, you're a lazy bastard. And I think that's a pretty shitty take because personally, I like consistency and I want to know what's going to come out. And while you can get some consistency with natural fermentation, largely you're going to have a better time if you just pitch the same yeast with the same grapes and you know what you're doing. So,
and spontaneous fermentation, based on the wines that I have drank that are fermented that way, it tends to do the same thing that it does to beer.
Yeah.
It's not only inconsistent, but it gets funky. I mean, really funky.
Yeah.
And you know, you can get
like
sour notes in it.
Poop and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's pleasant, but sometimes it's poop. And which
should
is
be
not
pleasant sometimes.
Sure, if you're into that, but I'm not. Yeah, I think that's just stupid.
Non-alc story of the week. The shutdown looks like it is still impending. Like we said a couple months ago, we warned you all this is coming at the end of September. It's looking like it is increasingly becoming likely. There's no reason to believe that's going to change other than potentially Kevin McCarthy not being able to get a handle on his side of the political party.
Yeah.
So shutdown, just be ready. If you are in the industry and you need to submit labels for approval or anything like that, make sure you get it done. If you need anything to do with the federal government, if you are in the industry, make sure you need to do it. You need to do it soon because otherwise you're going to be waiting potentially for a long time.
Kevin McCarthy's like the boss in Office Space. You know, just like this totally incompetent buffoon that has no control over what anybody does. Just roaming around the halls of Congress, just saying shit about TPS reports and being ignored the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that.
I feel a little sorry for him, but not really at all.
We have
I feel more sorry for America.
We have a slight bonus non-alc story of the week too. Donald Trump Jr. announced his dad dying and him running for presidency.
What?
You didn't see this?
No.
On Twitter, like yesterday or 2 days ago, he basically he got hacked. He announced on a tweet that Donald Trump has died and that he is now running for president in 2024.
Nice. Well, you know, a little bit of AI. And he can actually give the press conference that says that.
Well, like always, that's the news. Support us by doing what you do, liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and most importantly, check out our Patreon where you can buy us a beer once a month, which would be great, which is not a lot, right? You buy your friends a pint of beer and show us some love, and we'll continue to do what we do and show you love in return.
We love you, bitches.
Cheers.
Have a good week.